"Don't you dare leave me here alone, Amara! Don't you dare!" Ethan's voice cracked, a strangled cry in the dark. His manicured hands clutched her wrist, trembling, as the shadow of a gun barrel glinted just yards away. Amara stood still. Her face, framed by the faint halo of her scarf, betrayed no panic, no pleading. Only a calmness so steady it seemed almost impossible. She looked down at Ethan, not with scorn, not with pity, but with a kind of unshaken patience. "Breathe," she whispered. Her voice was soft, low, unyielding. "Do exactly as I say." The room pulsed with silence. The robbers hadn't spoken yet. Just heavy footsteps, just the scrape of boots across Ethan's marble floors. And yet, already, the air was split in two. Ethan's ragged gasps and Amara's calm. Hours earlier, the mansion had been alive with noise. Ethan Caldwell's estate, a modern fortress of glass and steel perched above Atlanta's northern hills, glowed like a jewel against the night. Chandeliers spilled gold light across the main hall, where 50 guests laughed, clinked glasses, and swirled in designer gowns. Ethan, tall and broad-shouldered in his tailored black tuxedo, moved through the crowd with calculated ease. His hair, thick, chestnut, perfectly combed back, caught the light as often as his storm-gray eyes did. He looked every bit the master of his empire, though his smile never touched his eyes. He was used to this, nights where everyone adored him, envied him, depended on him. And yet everyone here knew the unspoken truth. Ethan trusted no one. Amara Johnson slipped quietly among the guests with a tray balanced in her hand. Her uniform was plain, pressed white blouse, long black skirt, sensible shoes. Her dark brown skin glowed faintly under the lights, her movements precise and fluid. She didn't fumble, didn't linger. Her eyes, wide and deep, noticed everything. The way Ethan's jaw tightened when someone mentioned the robberies plaguing the city, the way his hand hovered protectively over his glass when strangers approached too close. Few guests bothered to look at her. One woman, tipsy on champagne, giggled as Amara passed. "How quaint," she murmured to her friend. "He keeps live-in help like it's the 19th century." The word stung, but Amara didn't flinch. She had learned years ago that invisibility was its own armor. From the second-floor balcony, Ethan overheard the remark. His eyes flickered toward Amara, then back to his guests. He said nothing. Not a word. Later that night, after the last cars rolled down the driveway and silence settled over the estate, Ethan retreated to his study. Papers lay scattered across his desk. Security proposals, neighborhood watch reports, requests for additional guards, a city plagued by robberies, and yet no one dared touch him. He almost smiled at the thought. Until Amara appeared at his door. "Sir?" Her voice was soft, but carried a firmness. "Forgive me, but I noticed, during the party, the back service door was left unlatched. Anyone could—" Ethan didn't let her finish. "That's my security team's concern, not yours." His tone cut like glass. "Do your job. Keep the floors shining, the windows spotless. Leave the rest to professionals." Amara lowered her gaze. "Yes, sir." But in her chest, a quiet warning curled tighter. It was just after 2 a.m. when the glass shattered. Ethan jerked awake to the shrill wail of alarms. Red lights pulsed across the ceiling as he stumbled from bed, half asleep, heart pounding. Shouts echoed through the halls, heavy boots crashing against marble. For one terrifying moment, Ethan was 12 years old again, hiding under his father's desk while strange men ransacked the house. His hands trembled violently. He ran to the hall. Shadows darted through the mansion. Figures in black masks, armed with guns, moving fast, efficient, his guards gone. Overpowered or worse. He turned a corner, and there was Amara, standing barefoot, clutching nothing but her scarf, eyes wide yet strangely steady. "They're here," Ethan rasped. "God, they're inside. What do we do?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at him, then toward the sound of footsteps approaching. She inhaled once, slowly, as though weighing something ancient inside her chest. Then she whispered, "Breathe. Do exactly as I say." The first robber stepped into the light. Tall, masked, a pistol glinting in his hand. He saw Ethan in his silk robe and sneered. "On your knees, rich boy." His voice was gravel, cold. "Hands where I can see 'em." Ethan froze, his body betraying him. His knees buckled before the command even finished. He sank to the floor, his face pale, sweat dripping. The gunman's eyes flicked to Amara. "And you, maid girl, on the ground." Amara didn't move, not a muscle. Her breath remained even, her gaze steady, fixed not on the gun, but on the man holding it. "No," she said softly. The robber blinked, startled by the defiance in her tone. Ethan stared up at her, shock flooding his face. "What are you doing?" he hissed, terror in his voice. But Amara did not kneel. She stood tall, her shadow stretching long against the wall, unflinching even with death aimed at her chest. The robber's grip tightened on the trigger, and Ethan, once the untouchable millionaire, realized with dawning horror that in this house, in this moment, the only unshaken soul was the woman he had overlooked all along. "Get down, I said!" The robber's voice tore through the silence like a jagged blade. His pistol twitched, impatient, the barrel aimed squarely at Amara's heart. But Amara didn't move. Her back was straight, her chin lifted slightly, her eyes fixed on the man behind the mask. "I won't kneel," she said quietly. Her words weren't loud, but they carried, steady, unwavering. "I've knelt enough in my life." Ethan's breath hitched. He was on his knees already, palms flat on the marble, sweat dripping down his temples. He looked from the gunman to Amara, his chest heaving. "What is she doing? She'll get us both killed." The robber's finger trembled near the trigger. "Lady, you think you're brave? I'll put you down first." Amara tilted her head slightly, her eyes unblinking. "You don't want to shoot me." Her voice was calm, almost soothing. "You came here for money, not murder. Killing me doesn't fill your pockets. It only makes it worse for you." The man faltered. For the briefest second his shoulders eased. Behind the mask his breath came rougher, uneven. Another figure appeared from the hallway, shorter, stockier, also masked, holding a duffel bag already heavy with stolen silver and cash. "Jay, quit wasting time. Grab the files, the safe, move." "Shut up, I got this," the first one snapped, though his gun still lingered on Amara. Ethan swallowed hard, his pride shredded by fear. He forced words past the lump in his throat. "Take whatever you want, just don't hurt me." His voice cracked, desperate, humiliating. "You want the vault? It's in my study. I'll open it. Just don't shoot me, please." The shorter robber let out a cruel laugh. "Look at him. All that money, and he's nothing but a scared little boy." Ethan's face burned. He wanted to shout, to rise, to reclaim the dignity slipping through his fingers. But his body betrayed him, pressed against the cold marble floor, shaking. And still, Amara stood. Hours earlier, she had lingered in her room long after the party ended, replaying the sight of Ethan brushing off her warning about the service door. She thought about her brother Marcus, 15 years old when he was gunned down in a liquor store robbery, his death written off as just another statistic. She had promised herself then, fear would never again own her. That vow pulsed now in her chest like a second heartbeat. "Why aren't you scared?" The gunman's voice wavered as though the question slipped out without permission. Amara met his gaze, even through the mask. "Because I know what fear does to people. It makes them reckless. It makes them sloppy. You don't want that tonight. You want to leave here alive. Just like me." The shorter robber cursed. "Jay, stop listening to her. She's stalling." He stormed past, shoving Ethan's shoulder with his boot. "Get up, rich boy. Show us the vault." Ethan scrambled awkwardly to his feet, stumbling toward his study. His silk robe swished around him like a shroud. Shame burned his throat, but survival overpowered everything else. The taller robber, Jay, hesitated, eyes still locked on Amara. "Don't try anything," he muttered, lowering his gun only an inch. Amara gave no reply, only followed with her calm, even steps. Inside the study the air was thick with tension. The massive oak desk loomed, scattered with contracts and blueprints. A portrait of Ethan's late father hung above the fireplace, his stern gaze seeming to mock the scene unfolding below. Ethan moved quickly, fumbling with the hidden panel behind a bookshelf. His hands shook so violently that the combination lock slipped twice. "Hurry up!" the shorter robber barked. He slammed the duffel bag onto the desk. I'm trying," Ethan stammered, voice cracking, his pride shattered with each word. Amara's eyes flicked to him briefly. She saw it all, the sweat, the trembling, the pale lips whispering half-formed pleas. The great Ethan Caldwell, idolized, feared, untouchable, was unraveling like a threadbare suit. And in that same moment, she felt something shift deep inside her. He wasn't a fortress, he wasn't a king, he was just a man. A man who had built walls of glass and steel around his life, but inside was fragile, breakable. The vault door finally clicked open. Stacks of gold coins, documents, all glittering beneath fluorescent lights. The shorter robber let out a low whistle. Jackpot. They began stuffing the bag, hands greedy, quick. Ethan stood frozen, useless, his chest rising and falling in frantic bursts. Amara's gaze swept the room. She noticed the second-floor balcony door, ajar, the curtain shifting with the night breeze. She noticed the way the shorter robber's mask slipped slightly, revealing a scar along his jaw. Details, always details. Her voice broke the silence. You think no one will notice? Cameras everywhere, police already on their way. You've got 5 minutes, maybe less. Shut up, the scarred man snarled, but there was panic in his voice now. He shoved more bundles into the bag, hands clumsy. Jay's gun shifted uncertainly between Ethan and Amara. His breath was harsh, conflicted, and Ethan, humiliated, trembling, small, looked at Amara with something new flickering in his eyes. Not pity, not disdain. Something like dependence. The sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Jay cursed under his breath. They're coming. The shorter man zipped the duffel bag, his movements frantic. We're not leaving empty-handed. He grabbed Ethan by the collar, jerking him forward. You're coming with us. Ethan's knees buckled. His mouth opened, but only a strangled sob came out. And in that instant, Amara stepped between them. Her body blocked Ethan, her gaze fixed on the scarred robber. You'll leave him, she said firmly, and you'll leave tonight alive, but only if you listen. The room froze. Guns, money, pride, fear, everything balanced on the edge of her words. The scarred robber's grip tightened on Ethan's collar, dragging him forward like a rag doll. Ethan's silk robe twisted, choking at his throat as his panicked hands clawed helplessly at the fabric. You think you're in charge, Ere? The scarred man spat at Amara. His eyes, sharp and feverish behind the mask, glinted with rage. You're nothing. A maid. You don't get to give orders. Amara didn't flinch. Her chest rose and fell evenly, her eyes locked on his. And yet, you're listening to me. Her voice was steady, low, almost maternal. Because you know I'm right. The longer you stand here, the less chance you have of leaving this house alive. The scarred man's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, his grip on Ethan wavered. Ethan whimpered, a sound that made his humiliation complete. The millionaire, idol of Atlanta's elite, reduced to a trembling man clinging to the silence between gunshots. He felt Amara's arm brush against him as she stepped forward again, shielding him with her body. It was a gesture that burned him inside. She, the maid he'd dismissed and ignored, was standing like stone, while he shook like a leaf. Sirens swelled louder outside. Red and blue lights flashed faintly through the cracks of the curtains. The estate's long driveway had become a funnel, and every second narrowed the robber's escape. Jay shifted his stance nervously, his pistol lowering slightly. Trey, we need to go. Now. The scarred man, Trey, snarled. Not without leverage. His eyes darted between Ethan and Amara, calculating. The cops see us walk out with nothing. They'll swarm us. We need insurance. A hostage. Ethan's blood turned cold. His knees gave way again, and he would have collapsed if Amara hadn't steadied him with a hand. Her touch was firm, grounding, like a mother steadying a frightened child. You won't take him, she said. Lady, move, Trey hissed. Amara's gaze didn't falter. You don't want him? A millionaire hostage? That's a life sentence the moment you're caught. The world doesn't forget men who steal from the rich. But a maid? She let the word linger, her voice almost bitter. Nobody writes headlines about her. Ethan's head snapped toward her, eyes wide in disbelief. Amara? No! His voice cracked with something between horror and guilt. But Amara stood firm. She wasn't begging. She wasn't sacrificing herself blindly. She was bargaining. You'll take me, she said, her tone sharp with finality, and you'll walk out of here alive. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. Trey blinked, thrown off by the certainty in her voice. Jay looked away, uneasy, his grip on his gun faltering. Ethan's chest heaved as his mind scrambled to process what he'd just heard. The woman he had treated like furniture, like background noise in his palace of glass. She was offering her life for his. "No," Ethan croaked, shaking his head violently. "No, you can't. This isn't—" His voice cracked, desperation flooding every word. "I'll pay you. I'll give you anything you want. Just don't touch her." The robbers froze. Even Amara's eyes widened slightly. Ethan Caldwell, the man who had dismissed her warnings, who had let his guests mock her without defense, was begging for her safety. Trey sneered. "You care about the maid? That's rich." But his words didn't carry the conviction he wanted. Amara had unbalanced him. The wail of sirens drew closer. A helicopter's spotlight sliced briefly across the mansion grounds. The police were circling. Time was running out. Jay swore under his breath. "We're out of time, Trey." Trey's grip faltered. His plan, take a hostage, slip away, was crumbling under pressure. And then Amara spoke again, her voice low, cutting through the chaos. "Look at me." Both men turned toward her. Even Ethan, pale and trembling, raised his eyes. "My brother died in a robbery like this," she said, her tone calm but weighted, like a confession to the night itself. "He was 15, and I watched him bleed out on the pavement because men with guns were too scared to walk away empty-handed." Her voice cracked slightly, but her eyes never left. Trey's. "You think this will make you powerful? It won't. It'll make you the same as them. Just another man who let fear decide his fate." Jay's eyes softened. His gun dipped another inch. Trey's jaw clenched. For the first time his hand trembled, not with anger, but with doubt. Ethan, still crouched behind Amara, felt the weight of her words pierce deeper than the robber's weapons ever could. Shame rose like bile in his throat. All the money, the security, the arrogance, it meant nothing. In this room, the only true strength belonged to the woman he had underestimated all along. "Please," he whispered, though he wasn't even sure who he was begging anymore. "Please don't do this." Amara glanced at him briefly, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Small, soft, almost imperceptible. Then she turned back to Trey. "Decide. Do you want to walk out alive, or not at all?" The distant pounding of boots shook the walls. Police were flooding the property now. Commands shouted through megaphones echoed faintly outside. "This house is surrounded! Drop your weapons!" Trey's mask slipped further as sweat trickled down his temple. His eyes darted to Jay, to the duffel bag, to the balcony door. Panic clawed at his chest. Jay shifted uneasily, his gaze flicking between Amara and the flashing lights beyond the window. "Trey, she's right. We can't win this." The scarred man's jaw worked furiously, torn between rage and survival. His grip on Ethan's collar loosened. And in that fragile moment of hesitation, everything in the room hung by a thread. The guns, the money, the power, the fear, balanced precariously on Amara's unshaken calm. "Drop the bag!" The command boomed from outside, the megaphone's metallic edge rattling the windows. The red-blue glow of sirens bled through the curtains, painting the room in panic. Jay's chest rose and fell fast, his pistol hanging limp in his hand. "Trey, we gotta move. Now!" But Trey's grip hadn't fully let go of Ethan. His scarred jaw twitched as he dragged the Millionaire half a step forward, the duffel bag dangling from his other fist. Sweat poured down his brow, making his mask slip further. His eyes burned with desperation. "They won't shoot if I've got him," Trey snarled. His voice cracked under the weight of his own fear. "He's my way out." Ethan gagged as the man's knuckles pressed harder against his throat. His knees buckled. "Please, please don't." The words came out broken, high-pitched, humiliating. Amara moved. Not fast, not recklessly, just a single step closer, her calm presence slicing through the chaos. Her voice dropped to a firm, resonant whisper. "Enough." Trey's head snapped toward her. "Stay back." His gun jerked in her direction. But Amara didn't stop. Her eyes were steady, her posture unyielding, her every movement deliberate, as though she carried an invisible shield around her. "You're already caught," she said. "Every second you stall, every threat you make, it's another year on your sentence. The only choice you've got left is how this night ends. Alive, or in a pool of your own blood?" Her words hit the room like a strike of lightning. Jay froze, staring at her with wide, uncertain eyes. His hands shook. For the first time, Ethan realized the robbers were just as terrified as he was. The police outside shouted again, "This is your final warning. Come out with your hands raised." The sound made Trey's composure splinter. He yanked Ethan tighter, his voice rising into a panicked roar. Shut up, or I'll—" "You won't." Amara's interruption was sharp, cutting through his words like a blade. Trey faltered. His gun wavered. "What makes you so sure?" Amara took another step forward. Her eyes glistened under the flashing lights leaking through the window. "Because you don't want to be the man who kills a maid. You don't want to be the man who kills another black woman for no reason. You don't want to see her face on every screen tomorrow, with your name carved into the story, because you'll never escape it." The words landed heavy, pressing into the cracks of his fear. Jay lowered his gun completely now, his arms slack at his sides. "She's right, Trey. We're done. It's over." Ethan's chest heaved as Amara moved closer, so close now that she stood between him and Trey's weapon. Her presence was like a wall shielding him, absorbing the storm. Her voice softened, carrying the weight of memory. "I've seen this before. I watched my brother bleed out on the street because men with guns didn't know when to stop. Don't make me watch it again. Don't make me bury another face in my memory." Trey's breathing fractured. His grip on Ethan loosened, then tightened again, torn between fight and surrender. His scarred face contorted with rage and shame. "You don't know me," he rasped. Amara shook her head slowly. "I know enough. I know you're scared, and I know you don't want to die here tonight." Then it happened. The megaphone thundered once more. Final warning. The sound shattered Trey's fragile hold on his own control. He shoved Ethan forward violently, raising the gun, and Amara stepped directly into his line of fire. Ethan stumbled, gasping, hitting the floor hard. He turned his head just in time to see Amara standing there, unflinching, unwavering, her body between the gun and everyone else. "Shoot me if you must," she said, her voice ringing with terrifying calm. "But you will not take another life tonight." The room went silent. Even the sirens outside seemed to pause, the air thick with the weight of her words. Jay's mouth opened, then closed, his gun dropping to the carpet. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, shaking his head as though waking from a nightmare. Trey's hands shook violently. His gun wavered, darted, faltered. His breath came in ragged sobs. I can't." And then, with a roar of boots and a crash of glass, the police stormed the mansion. Flashlights, shouts, the metallic chorus of weapons raised. Drop it now!" Trey's gun clattered to the ground. He sank to his knees, his scarred face streaked with sweat and tears. His hands rose slowly into the air, trembling, broken. Ethan lay sprawled on the floor, chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief. And Amara, still standing, still calm, watched the robbers collapse under the weight of their fear. For a moment, no one moved. Not the police, not the millionaire, not the men in masks. The air was still, reverent, as though the house itself bowed to the woman who had stood taller than anyone else that night. Then Ethan's voice broke the silence, raw and guttural. "Oh God." He dragged himself toward her on shaking arms. His silk robe tore against the marble as he crawled. "Amara, His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His hands clutched hers, his head bowed low against her palm. The once mighty Ethan Caldwell broke into his knees, begging forgiveness from the maid he had ignored. And cameras, police body cams, security feeds, captured every second. The flashing sirens outside bled into the mansion like streaks of restless fire. Officers swarmed the halls, their boots pounding against marble, radios crackling commands. The robbers were dragged away in cuffs, Jay quietly sobbing, Trey cursing and thrashing until his knees gave way and he collapsed, defeated. But the chaos around them blurred into nothing for Ethan. He was still on the floor, clinging to Amara's hands. His forehead pressed against her skin, his voice raw with something he hadn't allowed himself in years. Humility. "Amara." His words stumbled out in broken pieces. God, I should have listened to you. I treated you like nothing, and you just saved me. You saved us all." His storm gray eyes shone wet, desperate, pleading. How do I? His throat clammed. Osed on the words, choked by emotion. Amara stood tall, her hands still in his, but her face unreadable. Her breathing was steady, her posture dignified. Yet behind her calm eyes, memories rippled like shadows. Her brother's body on the sidewalk, her mother's screams, the endless years of invisibility she had endured in silence. The sight of Ethan, Atlanta's golden millionaire, kneeling at her feet in tears, struck something deep in her. She didn't move to comfort him, not yet. Because she wanted him to feel it, the weight of her silence, the weight of every time he had looked past her. The foyer was crowded now. Police officers stood like sentinels along the walls, EMTs rushing forward with stretchers and medkits. Guests who had stayed overnight, family friends, business partners, peeked from the stairwell, their shocked faces pale under the flashing lights. One of them, a balding man in a tailored navy suit, whispered too loudly, "Is that Caldwell? Crying? To his maid?" Another scoffed, their voice dripping disdain. Pathetic. The man nearly soiled himself. The whispers spread like wildfire. For years, Ethan had cultivated a reputation of power, cold perfection, untouchable wealth. Tonight, that mask had been ripped off before 100 eyes, and Amara stood in the center of it all, unshaken. "Sir," a police officer's voice cut through, "we'll need a statement, both of you." Ethan rose shakily to his feet, still gripping Amara's wrist as though she were his anchor. His face was pale, his tuxedo robe torn, his composure shattered. For once, he didn't care who saw. He turned toward the crowd, his voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "This woman—" His throat caught. He swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "This woman saved my life tonight. You all saw it. You'll tell the world." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Ethan Caldwell, who rarely gave compliments even to CEOs and governors, was openly declaring his maid a savior. But Amara's face remained calm, her lips pressed into a faint line. She did not bask in his praise. She only turned slightly toward the officer and nodded. "I'll give my statement." Hours later, the mansion was hollow. The guests had left, the police had packed up evidence, the robbers were gone. Ethan sat slumped in his study, his head in his hands, replaying every second of the night. The weight of shame pressed into his chest like a stone. He saw himself kneeling on the marble, begging. He saw Amara standing, strong, unyielding. He saw her words break Trey like bullets never could. When Amara entered quietly, her scarf neatly retied, he rose instantly to his feet. "Amara." His voice was hoarse. He gestured to a chair, awkward, uncharacteristically nervous. "Please, sit. You shouldn't have to stand anymore, not after—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Amara's gaze lingered on him. She walked forward, but she didn't sit. She folded her arms, her expression calm but unyielding. "What is it you want from me, Mr. Caldwell?" Her use of his formal title stung. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Finally, his voice came out in a whisper. "Forgiveness." Amara's eyes softened for just a moment, but then her back straightened again. Forgiveness is earned, not asked for, in one night. Her words cut him deeper than the robbers' guns. The following morning, news broke. Atlanta millionaire saved by Maid in midnight robbery. Clips from the police body cams hit the internet. Grainy, but clear enough. Ethan Caldwell sobbing at the feet of his maid. Amara Johnson standing tall before armed men, unflinching. The story exploded across social media. Some mocked Ethan mercilessly. Memes of him cowering, headlines about his meltdown. Others hailed Amara as a hero, her calm defiance replayed in slow motion across every network. By noon, reporters crowded outside the estate gates, shouting questions. "Mr. Caldwell, is it true your maid saved you? Amara, how did you stay calm when guns were pointed at you? Do you think the robbers targeted this house because of you, sir?" The balance had shifted. The story was no longer Ethan's wealth. It was Amara's courage. Inside the mansion, Ethan watched the coverage in silence, humiliation and awe warring inside him. His empire, his fortune, his reputation, they all felt smaller than the steady heartbeat of one woman's dignity. And as the cameras outside screamed his name, he whispered one promise to himself. "The world will see her, not as my maid, not as invisible, but as who she truly is." The press conference was Ethan's idea, but it was Amara's presence that made it unforgettable. The estate's grand hall had been transformed into a media circus. Podium at the front, velvet ropes keeping cameras at bay, the chandeliers glowing like interrogation lights. Dozens of reporters filled the space, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Ethan Caldwell stood stiffly at the podium, immaculate in a tailored navy suit. But his face looked drawn, sleepless, haunted by the events of the robbery. For once, the young millionaire didn't look invincible. He looked human. Beside him, Amara Johnson. Dressed simply in a pressed cream blouse and dark slacks, her hair braided back, her posture poised. She hadn't wanted to be here. But Ethan had begged. Not with words of command, but with quiet sincerity. "Please," he had said the night before, voice low. "Let me give you what I should have a long time ago. A voice." Now, as the room buzzed with flashing cameras, Ethan cleared his throat. His storm-gray eyes swept across the crowd, faltered, then locked firmly on Amara. "You've all seen the footage," he began, his voice low but steady. "The headlines made a mockery of me. I deserve that. I was terrified. I broke." His jaw trembled, but he pressed on. "But what the headlines don't fully show is her." He gestured toward Amara, who blinked, unmoved, her face calm. "This woman," Ethan said, his voice growing louder, "Amara Johnson, saved my life. Not because she had to, not because it was her job, but because she is braver than anyone in this room, including me." His words caught. His throat closed. For a moment it seemed he might crumble again, but he forced the last sentence out, trembling. "And the world should know her name." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras snapped furiously. Some smirked at Ethan's raw vulnerability, others marveled. But all eyes turned to Amara. One voice cut above the others. "Amara, how did you stay calm?" Amara's eyes scanned the sea of faces. She hadn't planned to speak, but something inside urged her forward. She stepped to the podium, her movements graceful, deliberate. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but carried an undercurrent of steel. "I stayed calm," she said softly, "because I've had guns pointed at me before. Not in mansions, not in robbery sprees, but on the streets where I grew up." Her words fell into the crowd like stones in water, rippling outward. When you've buried your brother after one of those guns fired, fear doesn't shake you the same way anymore. The room fell silent. Cameras still flashed, but no one spoke. Amara's eyes lowered briefly, then rose again, fierce and unblinking. "I saved Mr. Caldwell because I knew fear wouldn't save us. Calm would. Dignity would. That's all I had to give." The silence stretched, heavy, electric. And then, applause. Not from the reporters, but from somewhere in the back. A soft, tentative clap. Then another. And soon, the sound swelled. The press, the staff, even the police officers lining the walls, it built into a chorus of clapping, echoing off the marble like thunder. Ethan bowed his head, tears in his eyes, but Amara stood straight, chin high, as though she had been waiting her who. Life to be seen this way. Later that evening, the world exploded with her name. Amara Johnson, the woman who stood tall. Maid turned hero speaks truth to power. Clips of her speech circulated endlessly. Her calm face became an emblem, plastered across Twitter, TikTok, news outlets. Some called her the Atlanta Angel. Others simply called her what Ethan had declared, Savior. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Caldwell was not the center of the story. He was the man in the background, kneeling on marble floors, while Amara became the figure of strength the world needed. But not everyone applauded. At a private gala days later, whispers filled the air. She embarrassed him. She's playing the victim card. What happens when the maid starts thinking she's above her station? Ethan heard every word, and for once, he didn't shrink from it. He stood in their midst, his voice sharp as glass. "She's above all of us," he snapped, his jaw tight. "And if you can't see that, you can leave my house." The room fell silent, jaws slack, as the young millionaire turned his back on society's whispers to stand beside the woman who had taught him what courage truly was. Still, Amara remained cautious. She had seen praise turn to venom before. She had lived through being tokenized, paraded, then discarded. But one thing had changed. She was no longer invisible. and the world was waiting to see what she would do next. The autumn air outside the Caldwell estate carried a chill, but it felt cleaner than it had in years, like something heavy had been lifted, though not yet gone. The gates still swarmed with cameras, microphones, and flashing bulbs, but Amara walked past them without flinching. It had been 3 weeks since the robbery, and her life had shifted on an axis she never asked for. She was no longer just the maid in the Caldwell house. She was a symbol, a survivor, a hero to strangers who recognized her face in grocery store aisles. But to herself, she was still Amara Johnson, her mother's daughter, her brother's keeper, a woman who still had to figure out how to pay rent on the small 2-bedroom she shared with her mother. Fame didn't pay bills. Headlines didn't heal old scars. Inside the estate, Ethan stood waiting in the study, the same room where he had first begged for her forgiveness. He wore no suit today, just a simple gray sweater, sleeves pushed up. His hair was uncombed, his eyes shadowed with the weight of restless nights. On the desk between them lay a thick folder. "I've been thinking," Ethan began, voice low, careful. He opened the folder and slid it toward her. "These are the papers to transfer the Johnson Family Foundation into your name. Funding, legal structure, everything. I've already seeded it with enough money to run for decades." Amara blinked. She hadn't touched the folder. A foundation? For victims of violence. For kids like your brother. For families like yours. His voice cracked. "I don't want it to be about me anymore. I want it to be yours." The silence that followed was long, filled with 1,000 unspoken memories. Amara's hand hovered over the folder, but didn't take it. Her eyes locked on Ethan, sharp, searching. "Why are you doing this? Guilt?" Ethan flinched at the word. His gaze dropped, ashamed. "Yes," he admitted. "But not just guilt. Because I saw you that night. I saw who you are, and it's someone the world needs more of. Someone I wish I had been a long time ago." He looked up again, his storm-gray eyes trembling with sincerity. "This isn't charity, Amara. This is surrender. To the truth. To you." For the first time since the robbery, Amara sat down across from him. She touched the folder lightly, her fingers brushing the embossed lettering of her own name. She thought of her mother's tired eyes. She thought of Marcus, gone too soon. She thought of every time she'd been dismissed, ignored, invisible. And slowly she nodded. "I'll do it, but on one condition." Ethan leaned forward. "Anything." Her voice was steady, firm. "Don't ever call me your maid again. If I stay in this house, it's not to serve you. It's because we're equals. Partners. Or I walk away." Ethan exhaled like a man released from chains. He nodded, his lips trembling into the faintest of smiles. "Partners," he whispered. "Always." Weeks later, the first press conference for the Johnson Family Foundation filled an auditorium in Atlanta. Amara stood at the podium, no longer in the shadow of chandeliers or marble halls, but in the center of a community that felt like hers. Behind her, a banner bore her brother's name. In front of her, rows of children, mothers, survivors, all watching her with hope in their eyes. Ethan stood at the edge of the stage, not in the spotlight, but quietly present. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His role was no longer savior, no longer master of ceremonies. His role was to stand in the background and let Amara shine. Her speech was short, but powerful. "I once thought my voice didn't matter, that I was meant to be invisible. But the truth is, every single one of us has power. Not the kind that comes from money or reputation, but the kind that comes from standing tall when the world tries to make you small." Her eyes shone as she looked at the crowd, at Ethan, at her mother seated in the front row with tears streaming down her cheeks. "My brother didn't get to live long enough to see this. But this." She gestured to the banner, to the foundation, to the sea of faces. "This is for him. This is for all of us." The applause shook the room. That night, after the crowd had gone, Ethan found her outside beneath the glowing street lamps. The city hummed softly around them. "You were incredible," he murmured. Amara smiled faintly, her eyes tired but glowing. "No, I was just myself. Finally." For the first time, Ethan didn't feel the need to bow, or to kneel, Oh, apologize again. He simply stood beside her in the quiet, equal in the stillness, letting the night carry the weight of everything they'd endured. And though the world would remember Ethan Caldwell as the man who once trembled on marble floors, they would remember Amara Johnson as something else entirely. The woman who stood calm in the face of violence. The woman who turned fear into fire. The woman who changed the story forever.